Well, all this comes, of course, as Israel continues to weigh up exactly what action, retaliating action, it may or may not take against Iran after Iran strikes on Tuesday. And Douglas Herbert, our international affairs commentator, is joining me here on set. Doug, good to have you with us. Iran then bracing, as it were, for an expected Israeli retaliation. Some are asking where Israel might go. Might it bomb Iran's nuclear sites? While other observers say it's unlikely. Why is that?
Yeah, well, bombing the nuclear sites is quite literally the nuclear option. The reason they say it's not likely, well, in decreasing order, I suppose, is one, the U.S. is really trying to weigh in on this issue. Biden has made it clear he does not want nuclear sites to be hit. Now, you might roll your eyes and say, yeah, well, that's really worked in the past. Benjamin Netanyahu's really listened to Joe Biden and his administration from the outset of this conflict, not just the opposite. However, in this case, remember, the U.S. has been a key player in helping Israel to defend itself. In this case, played a key role in fending off the incoming missiles on Tuesday from Iran. Presumably, Israel would also need a lot of U.S. logistical and other intelligence support in any eventual nuclear strike attack. But beyond that, the reason it's more implausible, it's not that Netanyahu wouldn't be inclined to do it. It's not that Naftali Bennett, a former Israeli prime minister, has even urged on social media the prime minister and his team to go after the nuclear sites. There are a lot of voices very much pushing for a forceful, muscular response bombing nuclear sites. Iran has an extremely sprawling nuclear complex. It's a big country. Nuclear sites, when you say nuclear, what are we talking about? We're talking about research centers. We're talking about testing sites. We're talking about uranium enrichment sites. We're talking about sites that produce the gas that you pump into centrifuges. And we're talking about those centrifuges themselves, the notorious centrifuges, often buried deep underground, places like Natanz, notably Fodor. So when we're talking about the sites, you're talking about an extremely complex operation that would require Israel deploying missiles that would have to fly well over territories, Syria and Iraq, that are not exactly Israel's friends. In fact, they are in the so-called axis of resistance, as Iran sees it, axis of evil, as Israel sees it. They'd have to get there, and then they would have to be weapons that would be able to burrow way underground, way deeper than hitting the command and control bunker where Hassan Nasrallah was targeted. The sites for the Iranian enrichment, the Iranians have learned their lessons. They are deep underground, in some cases, up to 75 or more meters, and that is beyond a missile being able to attain it. Even if the Israelis were able to hit a couple of sites, it would not wipe out the program, and it might even spur Iran to withdraw, say, from the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and that would set off a chain of events, because once it does that, it could, in fact, try to accelerate, to speed up its nuclear weaponization program. For now, Iran still insists it's only for peaceful purposes, civil energy.
Doug, while you've been talking there, we've been seeing a lot of images of Benjamin Netanyahu behind you there. I mean, a lot of people saying that he's now emboldened. He can sort of do what he likes. I mean, how much support, though, do you think he has still?
More and more. It's amazing when you look inside Israel and you look at the psyche of Israel right now. The degree of the deep trauma from the October 7th attacks, Hamas attacks on Israel. From that tragic incident, Netanyahu came away, in a sense, reeling, politically, most of all, because a lot of Israelis saw this as a signal failure of him to protect Israel, to protect its citizens. He's been trying to stall on having a commission of inquiry into the causes of October 7th, precisely because he perhaps fears that it would find him at least partially culpable, and that could, in effect, jeopardize his time in power. For now, elections don't have to be called for, say, another 2 years, and he's essentially weaponized this issue. A lot of Netanyahu's critics have said that he has politicized and weaponized the issue of fear and anxiety stemming from those October 7th attacks, using it in order to legitimize himself as a wartime leader. The new focus on the northern border and crossing the ground incursions into Lebanon against Hezbollah, the bellicose, very tough talk about a muscular retaliation against Iran, all of this enables Netanyahu to rise above, to, in other words, transcend that image perhaps of weakness or even being off balance coming out of October 7th, and once again put him in the clothes of a real commander-in-chief. And in the mind of a lot of Israelis, even those who blame him for not bringing the hostages home, they still are very much for a forceful response, most Israelis, to Iran. Very hard to find dovish voices right now in Israel, restraining voices.
That's the support in Israel. What about the support in the US, Doug? I mean, we've got a US election, haven't we, less than 5 weeks ago. How's the prospect of all-out war in the Middle East factoring into that election?
Well, critics of the Biden administration will say that, this whole thing makes Biden look bad, right? Biden-Harris administration. Why? Because they haven't been able to influence Israel to stay its hand, to show restraint. Why hasn't it been able to do that? The logical extension of that argument is because the U.S., by saying that it will continue to uphold Israel's right to defend itself, has also continued to provide Israel with the weapons needed to defend itself. So the U.S., in some people's views, being complicit in Israel's ability to continue to ratchet up tensions in the region. It does make Biden look bad, but that's not to say that the opponents aren't cynically, sometimes weaponizing, literally, the issue. Donald Trump at a rally in the past 48 hours, he was in Wisconsin, basically said that Biden is leading us and Harris leading us to the brink of World War III, leading his critics to say that that is lazy and ill-informed and irresponsible talk, anything but. This would be a contained conflict within the region. They say that Donald Trump's comments literally are taken out of context, and that they are comments that are purely within the context of a political campaign and meant to throw his rivals off balance. But it is weighing heavily in this campaign, and we've even seen in a key swing state of Michigan, where there were a lot of non-committed voters, Democratic voters, who would not vote for Democrats in the primary, for Biden, that is, way back when. Right now, that state, this is actually weighing in the balance. If a weak policy on the Middle East could affect the outcome, in the sense of it could weigh in on how swing voters, undecided voters, ultimately vote in those states.